Good evening. Welcome to the Pullman City Council meeting for this Tuesday, May the 11th. And it's nice to have you attend this meeting. And again, we're still virtual. And we hope one of these days we'll get back in our new city hall as a council and meet actually in the council chambers. It'll happen one of these days. We have a positive outlook for that, and it will definitely happen. With that, Dee, why don't you take a roll?
Mayor Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Chapman.
Here.
Councilmember McCall. Councilmember Parks.
Here.
Councilmember Records.
Here.
Councilmember Sorensen.
Here.
Councilmember Weller. Councilmember Wright.
Here.
Here. Sorry.
And you can see Eileen's on as well. So we're all here.
Yes.
Under announcements tonight, a number of them around here, and really big news as far as the Pullman community is concerned and our medical community is concerned. For Washington State University Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine has earned the accreditation to start its first family medicine residency program in Pullman. The WSU Family Medicine Residency Program is based at Pullman Regional Hospital, a 3-year residency training program focused in critical access hospitals, in which physician residents will have opportunities to experience the full range of family medicine practice. The program, which will welcome its first residents the summer of 2022, will host 3 residents per year for a total of 9 residents when fully implemented. That is really big news, and I know the hospital has been working on it for some time, along with WSU and the Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine. May 9th through the 15th is National Police Week, set aside to honor and remember those law enforcement officers who've made the ultimate sacrifice, as well as the family members, friends, and fellow officers that they left behind. This year, the names of 394 officers killed in the line of duty are being added to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, joining more than 22,000 names already memorialized. These 394 officers include 295 who lost their lives in 2020. 182 of these fatalities were COVID-19 related. Pullman Police Chief Gary Jenkins says that law enforcement officers in the city of Pullman, state of Washington, and throughout the nation put their lives on the line every day in their communities. We are fortunate these brave men and women have chosen to dedicate their lives to the safety of others. I'd like to congratulate Pullman's 2040. Nathan Weller submitted on behalf of the city of Pullman an application with the Association of Washington Cities. We were notified last week that 2021 AWC Municipal Excellence Award for Pullman for 2040 is among the 22 projects submitted. So thank you very much, Nathan, and congratulations to Pullman 2040. Transportation Security Administration announced that local residents can make appointments now to enroll in TSA PreCheck at a temporary enrollment center at the Best Western University in Latah Room in Moscow. Enrollment will be open for 5 consecutive days starting Monday, May 24th. You can visit tsa.gov for PreCheck to find out more information on that. WSU Horticulture Club is having their spring plant sale. You can pick up cougar red tomatoes, fuchsia baskets, begonia baskets, deck planters, and pulp hanging baskets. You can schedule an appointment at horticulture.wsu.edu. National Bike Month is celebrated across the nation each May. Established in 1956, we celebrate biking as transportation and recreation. Bike to Work Week is May 17th through the 23rd. You can visit our city website for more information. And this is also Mental Health Month. Whereas mental health is essential to everyone's overall health and well-being, and whereas all Americans experience times of difficulty and stress in their lives, and whereas prevention is an effective way to reduce the weight of mental health conditions, and whereas there is strong research that animal companionship, humor, spirituality, religion, recreation, social connections, and work-life balance can help all Americans protect their health and well-being. And mental health conditions are real and prevalent in the community and nation. Now, therefore, I, Glenn Johnson, Mayor of the City of Pullman, hereby proclaim the month of May as Mental Health Month. I call upon residents, government agencies, public, private institutions, businesses, and schools in Pullman to commit our community to increasing awareness and understanding of mental health, the steps our residents can take to protect mental health, and the need for appropriate and accessible services for all people with mental health conditions. Next week on May 18th, Mike Burney will be here to discuss mental health conditions and also some help for all of us as well. Now, item number C on our agenda tonight is presentations. And so I'm going to turn it over to a board member from the Good Food Co-op, Nathan Weller, who will make the introduction. So Nathan.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. I appreciate that. Willow Falcon is a member on the board of directors with myself. She is trying to get connected currently. I was just on the phone with her. I guess it's important for me. The show must go on, so I will present until she arrives, and hopefully she'll get connected rather soon here. So as everybody can see, I'm not wearing a tie-dyed shirt just because it's a casual Tuesday. It's actually a Pullman Good Food Co-op shirt. And it's interesting, the story that how this came about was we went on the radio with Bill and Evan, and they asked us, so do we need to eat granola bars and wear tie-dyed shirts in order to go to this food co-op? So of course we decided to lean in to that and make tie-dyed shirts for the food co-op. So thank you, Bill and Evan. I'll explain a little bit about the Pullman Good Food Co-op. So from the beginning, our mission was obvious: to provide the community with equitable access to healthy, affordable, quality food. Destiny von Wolfenstein first started gathering with community members to discuss the need for Pullman's own food co-op in January of 2018. Since then, we've met with and heard from amazing individuals and organizations who are deeply passionate about bringing the co-op into reality. From the beginning, it has always been very clear that community members were looking for more than just a typical food co-op. They were looking for a space for food education, community engagement, supporting the efforts of local farmers, producers, and organizations who are already working to make healthy foods more accessible, such as Community Action Center. We believe in forging a deep bond with sustainable local producers to strengthen our local economy through investment, employment, and local goods, as well as providing an option for healthy food to those in our community who are facing financial challenges. Community, of course, is at the roots of the Pullman Good Food Co-op, and we look forward to communicating with everybody about our growth, which is why I'm presenting here and why Willow was planning on presenting here as well. We spent our first 3 months in 2018 with countless residents connecting with farmers and conducting a survey to help create our mission, values, and vision for the Pullman Good Food Co-op. Now in May 2021, I just checked with Willow yesterday, we are at 604 members and are continuing to raise money for a location and are starting the capital campaign. For comparison to other national food co-ops, it usually takes about 7 years to be established, but we have an amazing community support and volunteers, and we've been working overtime to drive this vision forward to bear fruit. Through the pandemic, we've been featuring local businesses each month to support our local economy and encouraging everyone to buy Pullman. Remember, individuals as well as local businesses can join as a member to have a vote in our decisions, and we'd love to feature all of you in our media releases and social media. Most recently, we held candidate forums and currently have 3 passionate and well-qualified candidates running for the 3 open positions. You may know some of them: Ken Cassavant, Ray Olson, and Justin Peters. I personally have decided not to run again in order to support this new leadership ideas, and because these individuals are more than qualified for the next steps of opening, which is the capital campaign. In order to accomplish a successful campaign, we will continue to reach out to community groups, individuals, and businesses to keep everyone informed and ask for support. So please, we would all appreciate you spread the word. And if you would like us to present at an organization or group that you are a member of, please let us know, because everyone here wears many hats. So I just want to thank you for the time that you provided us, and I can entertain any questions.
Joe did go on, and thank you very much, Nathan. I see Ann Parks has a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Nathan, for that information. I am a member, but I don't keep up with the communication as I should. So my question is, does the co-op have any ideas or leads on possible locations to open in?
Yeah, everybody wants to know about locations. So right now, there's been many that we've looked at. We were looking at the lumber yard, of course, as well as on down by Safeway, so on. And right now, with us doing a market study, we're continuing to look for new locations and where it would best serve the entire public. Some locations that look particularly inviting was, of course, downtown, because we're focused on downtown. But as Pullman continues to grow, these other options that are food deserts, quote unquote, food deserts, are occurring, in the campus area and so on and so forth. So the search continues, and considering we are raising approximately $1.9 million in order to open this, it's really important for us to continue to push forward. And I just want to mention, we could have, there were discussions about, we could open in a small location and then try to grow in that way. But really, from what we've already received, the information we've already received from other financial advisors is, the market here in Pullman and Whitman County is really ripe for this. Everybody really wants this, and it's best to open the main store and then not have to go through consequent, phases through that. So long answer.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, we thank you very much, Nathan, and you filled in very nicely for Willow. So thank you for doing that. Our next presentation tonight is the use of lodging tax funds and Lodging Tax Advisory Commission, and this is at the response of City Council requests for staff to perform a review and recommend any updates to City Code. With that, we go to our City Attorney, Laura McAloon.
Thank you, Mayor. So as the Mayor mentioned, the Council asked us during its budget process to do a review and come back with any recommendations about any updates to the City Code regarding the use of funds in the Civic Improvement Fund. That's Chapter 4.95 of the City Code. That's where all of your lodging tax revenue is deposited. So City Administrator Mike Urban and I have reviewed the code. We've done research and had multiple meetings and discussions about process and procedure. We also were able to draw on Councilmember McCall and Councilmember Records and get their input and their thoughts on how the City Council should consider updating the City Code. And so what we have for you tonight is a discussion item with some discussion prompts about suggested and recommended updates to the City Code to do that. So first recommendation we have is actual formalizing the existing Lodging Tax Advisory Committee in Title I of the City Code, which is where all of your other City Council commissions and boards are created and governed. Historically, Pullman has always simply followed Chapter 67.28 of the state of the Revised Code of Washington, which lays out the minimum requirements for a Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. We think it would be appropriate, and especially based on the discussions the council has had over the past couple of years about lodging tax, we think it would be really appropriate to include in Title I what you want the composition of the LTAC to be, define their duties, the terms, and have that codified in city code and make it Pullman specific, as your other codes and commissions are. And then the second update that we recommend is that we update Pullman City Code 4.95.030. And that's the city code provision under revenue that states how lodging tax revenues can be expended. It pretty much parrots exactly what is in the state law. So there isn't any local flavor to it, any local specialization of that, of course, within the broad parameters of what's allowed under state law. So at a minimum, we think that language should, that would be the appropriate place to define the authorization of the lodging tax grant program that the city has historically funded through the budget process. And then the process by which the city council can seek recommendations from LTAC prior to the city council making a decision on how to award lodging tax funds and how to use lodging tax funds. So based on the prior council discussions, it also seems possible that council would like to adopt other provisions regarding the use of lodging tax revenue, including the composition and duties of LTAC. And then the term metrics and parameters has been used frequently. So to specifically define what those metrics and parameters are that the city council would like to have in place. So as I mentioned, we've provided you with a number of discussion prompts. I hope it wasn't information overload. The three things that we provided you were a draft ordinance that's just simply a starting point and a shell for you to have the discussion and provide staff with direction on what you would like to do. The second item that I gave you was a compilation of sample code provisions from other jurisdictions in the state. Those were items that we reviewed with council members McCall and Records, and thought it would be appropriate to bring those to you as a whole so that you can talk about them and decide what you want to do. And then actually, as I was pulling the materials together and creating the document that has the where I cut and pasted sections from other city codes, I saw the PowerPoint that I had done in my files. We presented, I think it was February of 2019, I presented to the city council on just kind of an overview of how is lodging tax collected, who collects it, what's the tax rate. It did have 2018 data in it for financials, and we didn't update that for you, but if you want that information, we can certainly bring that back at a later meeting. So that's the information I provided. And I guess at this point, we'd ask for your feedback and your direction as to what next steps you would like us to take.
And I'm not seeing any reaction at this point.
I know. Looks like Councilmember McCall has her hand up, Mayor.
Okay, we'll go to Eileen, okay?
Let's see. It is a bit of information overload, and we absolutely have to have this in the city code. It has to become part of our city code. I certainly recognize that. However, I don't know about your schedule, but I know about my schedule and Councilman Records' schedule. We feel like we're like about a meeting and a half short of where we need to be in bringing good distilled information to the council. It's not that Laura and Mike haven't done a great job of providing us with plenty of information here, because they certainly have, but I'm not sure we're ready to take I think the phrase here is council has provided further direction, staff is prepared to finalize the ordinance. I'm feeling a little bit of a compressed time frame here, and I'd like a little more time and maybe have a chance to talk to my fellow council members a little bit more about this and choose this very carefully, because we're talking about a lot of opportunity here to make some really fine things happen in our community. And I want to make sure we get it together right. It's just a little bit, it's just not quite there in my mind.
Yeah, council member, I would completely agree. There was no intention to bring it back at the next meeting. Okay. This is, as I said, we provided you with discussion prompts so that the whole city council can provide us with, get the information and provide us with that input. If it looks like we need additional specific input from individual council members, we absolutely are always open to that and we'll take that. But we did feel like it was an appropriate point in time to get some direction from the full council as to how we should, what the next steps are, and maybe even what a timeline is. But there isn't any expectation that this gets finalized and adopted at the next meeting. Finalization, and I apologize if that made you feel that there was a time frame or deadline on that.
Well, timeline sounds pretty final.
It is, but I guess in my mind, we have an infinite number of drafts before we hit finalization.
Good. So let's hear from some of my fellow council members that I haven't had a chance to chat this up with. Yeah.
Okay, Dan, did I see your hand up a little bit earlier, and then we'll go to, okay, I haven't, so Pat Wright is next.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. And Laura, I totally concur with Eileen. I think the shell of the ordinance that you've given us is great. It really, really, really provides us with the structure I think that we've all been kind of struggling with this. So I appreciate the work that you did on, although I will tell you when it printed out, holy cow. Old eyes and small print are not a good match.
Oh,
but,
is it?
And
I agree.
Thank you. I think it's really a great starting point. I guess the only thing that we have that has a time consideration to it, and that is the related topic of the contract with the chamber, which as it stands right now is scheduled to expire at the end of June. And I think in courtesy to our chamber partner, we need to take a look at that. That would be my biggest concern at this juncture.
Yes, and I did note at the end of the agenda item that the city staff have initiated conversations with the chamber about that. It certainly makes sense to me, and I'll let city administrator speak for himself, but it certainly makes sense to me to extend that contract. I know Councilmember Records asked me a question about that, and I think that's an appropriate idea. You know, when you went with 6 months, nobody knew what else was going to happen with COVID and whether you would be able to have large scale events this summer. It looks like that's not a viable possibility. But also just being able to finish, you know, we talked to the chamber in January about the fact that they had advertising buys. The commitment was made to them verbally that if they had entered into contracts on behalf of the city for advertising that were a year long, and that's the cycle that they were, the city would make sure that those contracts were honored because they were done on behalf of the city. But yeah, there is absolutely merit in extending that as the city council works on that. The contract with the chamber for tourism promotion isn't part of the package that's before you tonight, because this is actually a much more basic step of defining how the city wants to spend lodging tax revenue. And if an element of that is tourism promotion, then how do you go through the process of handling tourism promotion? Is it something you contract for? Is it something you do in-house? Those are all discussions that need to happen at the policy level on that still. And in my mind, it is related, but it is separate from figuring out how to define the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, which is a committee that's mandated by statute and reports to the city council. And you can't spend money out of the Civic Improvement Fund without running it through the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. That includes money spent on tourism promotion contracts. So we need to have the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee structure in place before you decide how to move forward with tourism promotion. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Mike Urban, I saw that you unmuted, so you had some comments too, I assume.
Well, Laura said, yeah, what I can really add to that, just to really put a bow on the whole thing, is even though the chamber's involved in both spinning out the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee and those functions and the things that go along with it, separate from the tourism contract is the point here. And we could take our time putting the things together and still have a tourism contract with the chamber on an extension through the year would be my recommendation to the council as well.
Any other comments? Al Sorensen.
Yeah, we had a meeting today of LTAC, and I think it would behoove us to get some things in order. It's difficult as the commission to evaluate, make decisions, and know exactly what we can put money towards, what we can't. I did relook at that PowerPoint from a couple of years ago, Laura, and that's helpful. But we're still having, at least in my opinion, I am still having difficulties evaluating grant applications in a objective way with the way we've got it set up now. And so it would help a lot to the commission if we did get some things in, black and white and written down, and here's how it goes and how we go about it. I don't know where Pat is on that, but that was part of my thing today because we talked about the 4th of July celebration, and where does that fall in, and how does that fall in with whether they're bringing tourism into Pullman or not, and putting heads in beds and people eating out or not, or it's just it's difficult right now on my side to come up with a decision, because I'm sitting there as the son of a civil engineer going, this is what I got to follow these lines, and so I just throw that out to the rest of the council, knowing that it is important, because we do hand out a lot of funds and very important funds for everyone throughout the year. And I perused through those different cities and everything, and there's some great ideas there. But I'm with Eileen that, I mean, I wasn't ready to make a decision tonight either, but I need to read that stuff more in depth. We need to have some more conversations about it. But this is the right thing to do to get this, on the tracks and moving forward so we can get it done. So I throw this back to Pat for a second and see what she thinks as the chair of the commission this afternoon. So.
Well, no, I agree, Al. And as I said, I love the structure of the draft ordinance. I mean, and I'm not quite as black and white as you are, but I do like to see things with some structure and to be able to have some objectivity attached to making those kinds of decisions. I think, there's several steps involved in that, but yeah, I absolutely agree. And we did have a good meeting today, and we did arrive at a reasonable decision, I think, given the pandemic circumstances and the 4th of July circumstances. And I think we came away with a good plan.
We are moving up on a pretty good deadline. They did extend the deadline to order the pyrotechnics, but we are coming up on that deadline within about another week or so.
Right. And we address that.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on that? I see Dan Records. Dan?
I just want to thank Laura and Mike for all their work on this. I know, Laura, you put in a lot of work pulling this ordinance together, the draft ordinance. As far as, any specific things, you highlighted several sections in that draft ordinance for us to look at. One of the things I would like to just kind of highlight again in those highlights for the rest of the council to look at is you have a comment in that document on the side talking about annual items in the budget. And that's where I think we can look at putting things like 4th of July and Lentil Festival and having a kind of a more secure understanding of what we intend to fund for those events each year, so that we know what to expect. So when we have grant applications come in for those, we're really looking at, this is already part of the budget and this is what we expect to fund for that. And if you're asking for something more above and beyond that, that's where we would want you to elaborate on it in the grant application. And then that would take a budget amendment after if that was to be approved, then we could do a budget amendment. And I think that makes it a lot more kind of transparent for everyone, what we're spending on those things, and that we have a kind of long-term commitment to those events going forward as well. So we don't intend to, that indicates that we don't intend to drastically change those items from year to year. And I think Lentil Festival and 4th of July are easy events to kind of point at, but we might consider, are there any other items that we look at for LTAC funding that we would want to kind of call out in the budget, separate from the setting up a fund for the lodging grant program?
Yeah, we'll go to Pat and then Laura.
Just thank you, Dan. From a historical standpoint, that is typically the way Lentil Festival and 4th of July have been handled. After a certain period of time, where we were getting the same grant request applications in for the same amount of dollars for the same events, the decision was made to actually make those line item pieces in the civic improvement budget. But I think with the anomaly of the last 2 years, that's when things just kind of got off the rails just a little bit, from the standpoint that we didn't allocate any budgetary dollars for those events this year. So I think this, as I say, this is a bit of an anomaly, but I also recognize that we should be taking a look at those things that beyond 4th of July and Lentil Festival that do become routine in nature, that can be considered part of the whole budgetary process.
And I'd like to just kind of point out that, with the creation of an ordinance like this, I think what we're looking at is calling those items out in the budget to give it a line item and kind of a transparent idea of what we're spending on it, but they still will require the grant application process to go through to get access to those funds. Instead of how we've done it the last couple of years, which is just, it's in the budget and that's what creates the contract. I think what we're talking about is having to send everything through the same grant application process, so that we meet the compliance requirements for the state law.
I know we see the summer leagues every year. We see junior golf. We see certain ones every year that come up before the lodging tax commission. Laura, you had your hand up earlier. So.
Sure. And what I wanted to point out was that in the examples that I gave you, there are some jurisdictions that have those large events submit their applications for the next year's funding in conjunction with the city's budget process. And I would love to if the city wants to include those large projects in your budget, we need to make sure we still follow the required process of having the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee make a recommendation to you on what that funding level should be before you put it into your budget. Because you have to do that, right? And that's a step that I feel like we've kind of been glossing over. It's been included in the budget and lodging tax hasn't objected to it. But really it needs to be the other way around. We need to put the project and the dollar amount in front of LTAC, get their recommendation prior to you putting it in budget.
Al, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, Sorry, I got to use my finger on here tonight. My mouse is hiding somewhere. um, yeah, we had a little brief discussion about this during the meeting today because if some of this stuff was handled, over here in the regular budget, it would have made it a lot easier for the discussion today and how we go about doing things. So I think that is the perfect way to do it for these special events. That, to be honest with you, if you take our scoring sheet that we have made, which we created a year or two ago, after we had a big discussion about scoring, it would have made it a lot easier during the meeting today for everyone to be on a much more the same page. I'll put it, and that would be really helpful. And the scoring, the way we do it, eliminates some of these big events because they don't really meet the scoring. Now, I know that there are reasons to go around that, but it would be a lot easier. And so, we had a lot of discussion today about funding for the 4th of July event and how it's been a volunteer, donation, try to get as much as you can from somewhere else to pay for the event. And we still want that to happen. We want locals to participate, but this is a major event that's been going on for 40 years in this town, and we cannot let it go. And so there was some other minor talk about, where to get additional funding. And I'm going to defer to Pat and let her take it from right here. I think this might be the right point for us to just throw something at you guys here that we did talk about a little bit this afternoon.
Thanks, Al. So the question is, can we, and I'm talking we as in the lodging tax group, can we reach out to the city for financial assistance in this regard, since nothing had been budgeted in the chamber budget at all, or in the civic improvement budget? Are there dollars out there that could be used for fireworks rather than relying solely on LTAC dollars, particularly in a year when it's difficult to assess that the monies being spent on fireworks are satisfying the whole tourism requirement of these grants? Did that make sense?
And Mike, maybe even, some of the grant money we're receiving to the city to bring people back together again or something, just discussion.
Yes, there's a couple points in here. So let's do the first one. Let's pretend there's no American Rescue Plan right now. If the fireworks can be tied to one of our enterprise funds like stormwaters or utilities, sure, there's dollars available in those, but lack of that, we're talking about general fund revenues to pay for that outside of a specific stream. This year there is the American Rescue Plan, and we did receive guidance on that late yesterday. And one of my agenda items for next week is to bring a first blush, not a real deep dive, but a very good overview, and talk about some things next week. And with respect to what you're alluding to, addressing the negative economic impact caused by a public health emergency, speeding the recovery of tourism, travel, and hospitality sectors. So if there is a tie to tourism, that would definitely fit there. But if there's also a tie to tourism, so would the lodging tax dollars. Yeah, I would want to poke around on this a little bit more. That I'm not up to speed on this yet due to other constraints over the last 24 hours. But if there's another place that exists in here, yeah, I'll ferret that out ahead of the next discussion. But that's the one that kind of jumps out at me right now. Looking at some of these supporting small businesses, delivering assistance to workers, and rebuilding capacity. But yeah, if you think it's tourism, that's kind of what the lodging tax is set up for as well. So we could use some of these dollars outside of the lodging tax, from what I can tell.
So we did approve the grant application today for $16,000 based on the fact that it is a reimbursable expense. So no monies are expended until we get the bills. And with that in mind, that there may be some fundraising opportunities involved, as well as what we might be able to have from the city. But it was important that we at least step up and guarantee the funds so that the chamber could execute the contract with the pyrotechnic group in light of the May 17th deadline for that. So at least at this juncture, that's where we are. But, you know, I share Al's concern that we want to make sure that we are using these dollars appropriately.
And we have raised some additional money already from a couple of sponsors. So I think we've got 6,000 in so far. We're going to have some more that'll be coming in. In the past, obviously, we have a picnic, a barbecue out there. And usually we take in the neighborhood of a good chunk of the money that we need for the fireworks through that barbecue. And obviously we can't do that this year. We couldn't do it last year. So, but we were able to get a fireworks show last year, and we did it from a different location where people couldn't gather, but people saw it. And this year, we've already secured that same property again. So if people are up at the high school or Kamiak Elementary or anywhere in the area, the north area, they can see a great fireworks show if we can get the pyrotechnics approved. But anyway, we're still working.
Mayor?
Yeah.
Mayor, can I just ask for some, I'm sorry, I'm not following the question about can LTAC reach out to the city for financial assistance? Because these are city sales taxes. These are city funds. It's just like your utility funds, it is a restricted fund that can only be used for certain purposes. So COVID, the pandemic, has absolutely impacted the analysis of how many tourists your 4th of July celebration will bring to town. But every recommendation from LTAC comes with that guesstimate, that very subjective guess of how many people will come to Pullman for this specific event. Lentil Fest has that. The golf tournaments have that. Every event, you can't get away from the subjective nature of lodging tax grants or spending lodging tax funds on tourism activities, because it is a guess and a hope that if you do it, they will come. And then that subsequently, you have the reporting obligations so that the state can track how well the definitions in the statute are working, how well this revenue generating program is working to increase tourism throughout the state. So that objective finite number analysis always has to happen after the event. So at the time of application, it's always a guess. So I hear what you're saying, that you can't tell this year whether people will come to Pullman for that. But as long as it is designed and published and marketed to encourage people to come to Pullman, park in a parking lot, visit a restaurant, restaurants are open, spend money in town and watch the event, there is absolutely no requirement that they spend a night overnight. That's simply one factor of the analysis. That's not a requirement for spending the funds.
And last year we did have a number of people that came and went to restaurants and actually got picnic baskets or barbecue and actually did watch the show. So at least we had that kind of documentation. Al?
Yeah, so Laura, I think my bottom line today is, and I'm just going to ask you outright. So the 4th of July fireworks show put on with contract with the chamber to the pyrotechnics people, you believe is a legitimate use of the LTAC money?
Absolutely. And it has, in my opinion, it has been every year that Pullman has spent funds on it.
Okay, that's where I was going today. I wanted to make sure we weren't going to get in any trouble because we weren't doing the right thing for it. And I just needed that verification. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I do have one other thing, maybe Pat, I don't know if you were going to say this or not, but we're not going to have another meeting before this contract has to be signed. We as a council, I don't know if we bring it up under new business or do it now or what, but we're going to need to approve this tonight.
But yes, I assumed, I looked at the agenda and I have reviewed the grant application and I know what the action was of LTAC today. Absolutely. I'm assuming it will be brought up under new business because they cannot rely that the funds will be spent. All that LTAC ever does is make a recommendation to the city council. They are not the final word on the award of a grant. It has to be after city council approves it.
Okay.
So do we do that now or do we bring it up in new business?
Probably more appropriate to bring it up under new business.
Okay.
I just wrote it down on my agenda, so I'll remind you when it comes time for new business. Okay.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Al.
Yes. Thank you very much for a really robust discussion on this, and really appreciate that. And thank you for the additional time. And again, the subcommittee, Eileen and Dan, you're doing a great job, and we appreciate the extra work you're putting in on this. And Laura, thank you for a lot of material.
And Mike has his hand up.
Hey, Mike.
Looks like this item's wrapping up, so I wanted to get a clarification from the council to give you more time to absorb this and have a more thoughtful discussion. When should we be bringing this back to you on an agenda? June, sooner, later?
The 25th would be great for me. That'd give us a couple of weeks anyway. At least it's the next discussion.
Okay. Any concerns with that from others?
Just a comment. Do we want to resolve the issue, give clear direction on what to do with the chamber contract extension tonight?
Would that be new business as well, Laura?
That I would say that would come up under new business, but it would absolutely give the chamber some certainty.
Okay. Again, you're just talking to renew to the end of the year.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Anyone else? Oh, Ann Parks, you had your hand up.
Oh, yes, thank you. I think the 25th is appropriate, or if we need to go into early June, that would be fine too, depending on staff time and capacity. But I think the sooner, if we, I don't want to put it out till July or August. I think it's something that we need to move on and keep up on the table so that it doesn't drop off.
Okay, back to Laura.
Mayor, what I would, it's based on what I'm hearing from council. If we have another discussion, when you have had an opportunity to really fully digest all the materials we provided, so then that sounds like we could have a discussion, maybe some preliminary direction and everything, and we can just have the discussion item for the council until you're ready to say, okay, Laura, go put these words into an ordinance draft and bring it back to us. And again, that can be for more discussion or for action. So that you could have the meeting on the 25th and know that then perhaps you're meeting again in 2 weeks to have another discussion or to look at a revised draft.
Okay. I'll make sure it gets on the agenda. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. We now move to the consent agenda. These items are considered routine in nature, and council's had a chance to study these over ahead of time. Do I hear a motion to read by title only?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? And with that, Laura McAloon.
Thank you, Mayor. Your consent agenda consists of a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes of the special workshop meeting of April 13, 2021, and approve them as submitted. A motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes of the special workshop meeting of April 27, 2021, and approve them as submitted. A motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 103045 through 103100, totaling $465,192.31. A motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 103110 through 103141, totaling $100,480.56. And a motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 103101 through 103109, electronic transfers 1112 and 710 through 714. Payroll check numbered 74919 and payroll direct deposits numbered 68240 through 68560, totaling $907,797.28.
Is there any item the council would like out for discussion? Seeing none, the consent agenda consists of items 1 through 5. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
Move and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? With that, we now move to item F on the agenda tonight. This is an ordinance annexing to the city of Pullman a certain contiguous real estate property located south of the intersection of Golden Hills Drive and South Grand Avenue. Before we go to RJ Lott, our planning director, it is time for the appearance of fairness questions. And so with that, I will read the question and I'll call on you as I see you on my screen, okay? Does any member of this council have any knowledge of having conducted business with either the proponents or opponents of this proceedings? Dan?
No.
Ann?
No.
Eileen?
No.
Pat?
No.
Brandon?
No.
Where did Al go? Don't see him on my screen. Maybe we lost him for a second. Okay, we'll come back. Item number 2 is any member of this council communicated with any proponent or opponent regarding the proposal that is subject to this proceeding. Dan?
No.
Ann?
No.
Eileen?
No.
Brandon?
Well, wait a minute. A gentleman tapped on the door here at City Hall. He thought the meeting was an open meeting this evening, and he shared a comment with me.
Okay, Laura?
So, council member, you would simply share that comment during the discussion.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, he'll ask whether that comment whether you've prejudged it based on that comment. And I let you answer, but I'm sure I know what the answer is.
Yeah, so no.
Okay. Pat?
No.
Brandon?
Yeah, somebody called me a few days ago, I guess on behalf of a client, and I kindly forwarded her to RJ. So I believe that she has contacted the city. I did let her know it was quasi-judicial.
Okay. Nathan? And I saw your lips move for no, but didn't hear you. But anyway, Al Sorensen. And I'm seeing Al's name, but I'm not seeing a response on that. Item number 3, does any member of this council have either a financial or personal interest in the outcome of this proceeding? Dan?
No.
Ann?
No.
Eileen?
No.
Pat?
No.
Nathan?
No.
Brandon?
No.
Al?
No, I'm sorry, I missed any other questions.
Yeah, and since you're there right now, I'll ask you another question. I'll ask you 2 more that you missed. Has any member of this council communicated with any proponent or opponent regarding the proposal of this subject of this proceeding?
No.
And does any member of this council have any knowledge of having conducted business with either the proponents or opponents of this proceeding?
No.
Okay, now we're up to date. Item number 4, does any member of this council know whether or not their employer has a financial interest in this matter or has an interest in the outcome of this proceeding? Dan?
No.
Ann?
No.
Eileen?
No.
Pat?
No.
Nathan?
No.
Brandon?
No.
Al?
No.
Does any member of this council live or own property within 300 feet of the area which is subject to the proceeding? Dan?
No.
Ann?
No.
Eileen?
No.
Al?
No.
Does any member of this council have any special knowledge about the substance or merits of this proceeding, which would or could cause the council member to prejudge the outcome of this proceeding? Dan?
No.
Ann?
No.
Eileen?
No.
Pat?
No.
Nathan?
No.
Brandon?
No.
Al?
No.
Is there any member of this council who believes that he or she cannot sit and hear this matter fairly or impartially, both as to the respective positions of the proponents and opponents of this proceeding? Dan?
No.
Ann?
No.
Eileen?
No.
Pat?
No.
Nathan?
No.
Brandon?
No.
Al?
No.
And we ask this even though we don't have anyone in the audience, but we haven't heard from anyone in the audience that said this. So is any member of the audience who, because of the appearance of fairness doctrine, wishes to disqualify any member of the council from hearing this matter? And if so, please state the name of the council member and the reason or reasons why you believe that member should be disqualified because of the appearance of fairness doctrine. And as far as I'm concerned, they're no for all those questions as well. So with that, we now go to RJ Locke.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. The item before you this evening on your agenda is an annexation. This annexation is located south of the intersection of Golden Hills Drive and South Grand Avenue. The approximate acreage of the proposed annexation is 119.18 acres. I believe you should see the map now. The dark gray line is the proposed south bypass location. I know that's been a source of some questions in the past, so we put that on there for you. This area of the urban growth area is pre-zoned C3 general commercial. That provides for areas of commercial services such as food, lodging, and also intended for larger lots of 10 acres or more that could involve outdoor activities, light manufacturing, or heavy truck traffic. Annexations are categorically exempt from a SEPA checklist, and a traffic study would not be required until a site-specific proposal has been reviewed by staff. There's currently one residence within the area proposed for annexation. If the annexation is approved, this residence would be permitted to continue under the non-conforming use and structures section of the municipal code, section 17.30. The current Whitman County zoning designation for this area is agriculture. The Whitman County zoning would not allow for commercial uses if this area would not be annexed into the city. The reason that there are two parcels in this annexation is that there is a policy located within the comprehensive plan that would not allow for essentially a donut hole annexation. So therefore you have the larger parcel on your map as well as the smaller parcel, which is owned by an individual that is not part of the application group. His comment letter is part of the packet that is included, or his comment letter is part of the inclusion of your packet, and I can certainly address some of those concerns he has if the council desires. The Planning Commission met on December 16th, 2020 to review the notice of intent. After a discussion, the Planning Commission voted 7-1 to recommend approval to the City Council. Consequently, on January 26, 2021, the City Council voted unanimously to accept the proposed annexation subject to three petitioner instructions. The first being the petitioner shall assume their proportionate share of city indebtedness upon annexation as determined by the City Finance Director. Number two, the petitioner shall accept the assignment of a C3 general commercial zoning designation for the subject property to become effective immediately upon annexation. And three, prior to City Council public hearing on this annexation proposal, the petitioner shall initiate proceedings for annexation on the subject property to Whitman County Hospital District Number 1A. And that petition to the hospital district is also included in your packet for this evening. If there's any questions that I can answer from the council, I'd be happy to do so.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, Al Sorensen, I see your hand up.
Yeah, RJ, again, thank you very much for throwing the bypass line on there. It's very helpful. And I can see that it just kind of skirts the edge of this, and that bypass being heavier traffic, commercial traffic, I think could expose the backside of this property to some good things there, you know, outside of the city. So I appreciate you putting that on there. In regards to the letter from Manure and his comments in there, can you explain to me? He references that he wasn't notified of some things, and I from our discussion for my previous request to annex and notification, can you tell me, did he physically get notified, or how, you know, give me a little more detail on that, please?
Yes, so the his letter is confusing two different applications, in my opinion. If you recall, back in November, December of 2020, there was a preliminary plat called the South Grand Business Park, and he references that here with 9 acres being subdivided into commercial lots. So we went back and we reviewed the noticing. We have affidavits of notice, and they are timely. So his notice for that application was done correctly, and we can provide those affidavits if requested. The notice for this annexation would not have occurred until just a few weeks ago. So I think that Mr. Dowd may have confused the noticing requirements or the noticing procedure for the South Grand Business Park done last winter with this annexation request.
Okay, did you respond to his letter to him at all on any of this, or?
I did. When we first, he sent this letter, it appears to be a copy from something that he sent late last year, or perhaps early this year. And I did respond to his concerns, and I did not hear anything back from him. We did that via email.
Okay, and then I believe the only other notification or question was an email that we received, I think maybe yesterday. Is that the only other comment so far?
Yes, there was another email from a Miss Susan Gormson.
Gormson, yeah.
Yes, okay. And that was dated May 9th. So that was, a day or two ago.
Okay.
And that was indeed the only other comment we received on this item.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I see Eileen.
Yeah, would this be the time to share the comment from the citizen who came to the council meeting or came to the door this evening? He had a concern.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you,
yes.
Laura. His concern it was Jerry Finch, and he lives right at the edge of this proposed annexation. His only concern, bless his heart, was that he wondered who was going to be responsible for weed control, fully realizing that it's unlikely that this property would be fully developed anytime real soon. He's been disappointed in the county's weed control efforts regarding this property, and he was wondering he was concerned and wondering who was going to be responsible for weed control once this property is annexed into the city, whether it's going to be the property owner or the city, or so, Jerry, you know how meticulous he is about his property. So yeah, what do we think?
Yeah, so if this annexation is approved, then the property owners would need to abide by city regulations for weed control.
Thanks. I'll pass that on.
Which will probably be a little bit tighter than what, and as a former county commissioner, you would think that he would have some connections over there in Colfax.
Well, he had some concerns for sure.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Ann Parks.
Thank you, Mayor. RJ, as with other annexations, I just want to clarify, if this is annexed in and as developments are proposed in the future, the city would require the proposed developments to have responsibility as far as not just definitely sidewalks, but all the things that are involved with mitigating the disturbance of the residents around them, and maybe, being mindful of things like walking trails or throughout the area. So that would come at the time of proposed developments in the future. Is that correct?
Yes, so city staff would do a site plan review when there would be a proposed subdivision or perhaps a building permit. So yes, it would be covered later on, but not at this stage in the progress of the site. But that would be, that would definitely be covered later on with a site specific proposal.
All right, thank you for clarifying.
And I just want to add on to that to clarify, that's the time that an environmental impact review would be done, as well as any traffic studies would be done at that time as well, right?
Yes, so most likely this parcel would be divided since it's well over 100 acres. I don't foresee it being 100 acres in the future. So at a future division, we would require a SEPA checklist and a traffic study.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Al Sorensen.
Just real quick, can you throw that map back up real quick, RJ, that you had there that showed the surrounding area also?
Yes.
Thank you. So it looks to me like this piece of property, we've got the commercial zoning along South Grand Avenue all the way out to the bypass, and then across the street, basically, there's the C3 and things, and so this is, and then we've got some more pre-zone to the left as C2, and this is pre-zone C. Now, Eileen, I've got to get my eyes going here. I can't make it bigger because it's RJ's screen. But is that C3 to the left, or is it C2?
No, C2 would only be in the downtown core. So this would be all
C3.
Yeah, C3 in this area.
Okay, so we basically have this whole area here between Grand and the proposed South Bypass as commercial zoning.
Yeah, the only other zone is immediately to the west along Grand is R2. And there is some industrial to the southwest of this location, but
that's
everything
across
else,
Grand. Yeah,
everything else would be commercial pre-zone.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? If not, you have an ordinance before you. Do I hear a motion?
Move to adopt the city zone, or I lost my words here. Move to adopt the.
You can make it real easy. Just adopt the ordinance 21.
There you go. Adopt the ordinance.
Do I
don't have it up on my screen.
Second.
Okay, I've got a second.
Number 21.5. There you go.
Laura, would you read the ordinance? We do have the second from Brandon, okay?
Ordinance number 21-5, an ordinance annexing to the city of Pullman certain contiguous, real property located south of the intersection of Golden Hills Drive and South Grand Avenue.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Thank you very much for that. We now move to the regular agenda. We have an ordinance there denying the proposal to amend the zone classification from R2 to R4 for the real estate herein described, consisting of 20,490 square feet located at 855 and 905 Northeast D Street. But before we begin, it's time for the appearance of fairness questions. Feel like a game show host. Anyway, here we go. So, does any member of this council have any knowledge of having conducted business with either the proponents or opponents of this proceeding? Dan?
No.
Ann?
No.
Eileen,
No.
Pat,
No.
Nathan,
No.
Brandon,
No.
Al.
No.
Has any member of this council communicated with any proponent or opponent regarding the proposal that is subject to this proceeding? Dan,
No.
Ann,
No.
Eileen,
No.
Pat,
No.
Nathan,
No.
Brandon,
No.
Al.
No.
Does any member of this council have either a financial or personal interest in the outcome of this proceeding? Dan,
No.
Ann,
No.
Eileen,
No.
Pat,
No.
Nathan,
No.
Brandon,
No.
Al.
No.
Does any member of this council know whether or not their employer has a financial interest in this matter or has an interest in the outcome of this proceeding? Dan,
No.
Ann,
No.
Eileen,
No.
Pat,
No.
Nathan,
No.
Brandon,
No.
Al.
No.
Does any member of this council live or own property within 300 feet of the area which is subject to this proceeding? Dan,
No.
Ann,
No.
Eileen,
No.
Pat,
No.
Nathan,
No.
Brandon,
No.
Al.
No.
Does any member of this council have any special knowledge about the substance or merits of this proceeding, which would or could cause the council member to prejudge the outcome of this proceeding? Dan,
No.
Ann,
No.
Eileen,
No.
Pat,
No.
Nathan,
No.
Brandon,
No.
Al.
No.
Is there any member of this council who believes that he or she cannot sit and hear this matter fairly and impartially, both as to the respective positions of the proponents and opponents of this proceeding? Dan,
No.
Ann,
No.
Eileen,
No.
Pat,
No.
Nathan,
No.
Brandon,
No.
Al.
No.
And again, we have not heard from anyone, but I will read the question as told to me by our city attorney that I should read this question. Is there any member of the audience who, because of the appearance of fairness doctrine, wishes to disqualify any member of this council from hearing this matter? If so, please state the name of the council member and the reason or reasons why you believe the member should be disqualified because of the appearance of fairness doctrine. And again, we had no one that made any comment about that. As far as all those questions for Glenn, it's no for all those as well. And now with that, RJ Lott.
Thank you once again. Good evening, Council. So this item on the agenda is also related to the next item on the agenda. However, they're different in nature and require two separate motions. So this first one is the zone change for 4 parcels on Northeast D Street, commonly known as 855 and 905 Northeast D Street. There are 4 parcels in this proposed zone change. However, they function pretty much as 2. And there are 2 residences. My computer here is a little slow getting the map up, but perhaps we'll get it here shortly. Well, it looks like it's not going to work. So the location is there on D Street, located north of Colorado at the intersection of Shaw and D Street, pretty much due west of the WSU soccer field. I think it should be on your screen here shortly. There we go. So the total area for the zone change is 20,490 square feet. The application requested a zone change from R2 low density and multifamily residential to R4 high density multifamily residential. The Planning Commission did hold a public hearing on this item on March 24th, 2021. Prior to that hearing, the Planning Commission did receive about 8 or 9 emails voicing their opinion on the proposed zone change, and those are included in your packet for this evening. All of the emails received to the Planning Commission were in opposition of this proposed zone change, and during the public hearing, there was perhaps 12 to 15 individuals that spoke All of those were against the proposed zone change, and they cited reasons being the neighborhood culture, the neighborhood feel, traffic, noise, parking. There were some current residents that voiced their opinion that they felt that the current feel of the neighborhood was enjoyable, and they did not want to see an increase in density in the area. The Planning Commission also pointed out, as you can see on the map, non-linear zoning. So the map's a little busy, but if you start at Colorado, there is a WSU zone, then it goes to C1, and then in between C1 and the subject property, there is a R2 zone. And then if this were to be approved, it would go to R4. So there is a little bit of a hopscotch in zoning there. And the Planning Commission did have some concerns about that. Ultimately, after the public hearing concluded, the Planning Commission did unanimously vote to recommend disapproval of the zone change. Are there any questions of the council?
You might take off the screen share so we could see the console.
Yeah, I apologize. It's
slow.
Very slow. I don't know.
I can see 4 members right now, but there we go.
There we go. Yep.
Any questions on this? Yes, Al.
RG, a lot of pages to this one. The proposed change, there was an awful lot of talk about parking. And was there going to be on-site parking or no?
Yes, they would have required on-site parking. Similar to other items on the agenda, we didn't have a site-specific proposal to review for parking, but presuming that there would be an increase in the number of units associated with the change in zone from R2 to R4, there would be some required on-site parking, because there simply would not be enough on-street parking for those number of units.
Yeah, it's a congested area. It is a major walking route from across Stadium Way, even coming up that way and then coming up D Street. So there's just a lot of stuff going on down there. So okay, thank you.
Nathan, I saw your hand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. RJ, thank you for this. As Al had said, with that being a major walking route, I know I used to take my dog along that. It is the Planning Commission obviously did a great job in looking at this and the decision, and it's very encouraging to see that citizens are coming and speaking up about this. Oftentimes, what happens is the Planning Commission gets something, and then there's very little to no feedback. And so it's difficult to judge how surrounding residents feel. So I hope that continues, because it definitely helps, I feel, at least myself. Just wanted to thank you for your work, and then the citizens for speaking up.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, this item certainly had the public's attention, presumably due to the location. And the nature of the change. So yes, this had a lot of public participation with it.
Dan Records.
So just a comment, what particularly jumped out to me about this particular proposal or petition is that, like you said, there's that WSU zone and then an R2, and then we jump to R4 and then go back to R2 on the same street. And that's just, that's just really choppy, and it doesn't really fit with the contiguous nature of that neighborhood. There's certainly R4 on other streets, just down the way. But as you're walking down that street, going from an R2 residence to an R4 and then back to an R2, it's just it's just not good planning, I don't think, to go that route.
Okay. Any other comments? If not, do I hear a motion on this ordinance which denies the proposal to amend? Okay.
Move to adopt ordinance number 21-6.
Okay.
Second.
All right. And I saw a second. Okay. From Ann Parks. Laura, would you read the ordinance, please?
Ordinance number 21-6, an ordinance denying the proposal to amend the zone classification from R2 to R4 for the real estate herein described, consisting of 20,490 square feet located at 855 and 905 Northeast D Street.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, and resolution that's very much related to this. RJ, you want to give us a brief introduction on this one?
Yeah, so this is the resolution to change the comprehensive plan map designation from low density multifamily to high density multifamily residential. I'm not going to put the map back up because it appears to slow things down quite a bit, but this would have been the accompanying resolution for the comprehensive plan map designation.
Okay. There's no other questions. Do I hear a motion on this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Moving second. Laura, would you read the resolution, please?
Resolution number R-29-21, a resolution denying the proposal to amend the official comprehensive plan map of the city of Pullman from low density residential to high density residential for the real estate herein described, consisting of 20,490 square feet located at 855 and 905 Northeast D Street.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Item number 3 on the agenda tonight is a motion to authorize staff to prepare a request for proposals for an economic development marketing plan. With that, we have Jennifer Heckman, who's our economic development person.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. I am going to share my screen here. Hopefully this works. The item before you is a motion to direct staff to prepare an RFP for economic development marketing for the desired tier that you would like to move forward on. As the notes for the agenda items say, Council discussed economic development marketing in November of 2020. And at that time, asked staff to research possible tiers of investment to create the materials. I want to acknowledge that this item we would have hoped to have had it a little bit before now, and it made it to the agenda and then got bumped. It made it to the agenda and then got bumped. And there were just some other time-sensitive items that the council was had before it. So I believe, I don't want to speak for the city administrator, but he wanted you to have adequate time to consider this item. So it's before you tonight. So I'm going to just share a few slides just to provide a little bit more background into this item. During the discussion in November, Council was interested in supporting recovery, retention, and especially recruitment. And Council members commented that it was important to use a professional agency to develop materials, that there was a need to invest with the right level of funding, not too much and not too little, and the need to target, to track and measure, and to use the right channels, which is kind of how the messages are delivered to prospects as we look to build the pipeline of businesses interested in locating in Pullman. So the International Economic Development Council recommends thinking about marketing and attraction as a cycle, putting the community in the position of the product here in this slide, and then the potential desired businesses are the market. As I go through this, if you have any questions or want to stop and discuss, just let me know. And then there are many benefits to marketing and attraction and a few key limitations. And we'll probably come back to this, but while I was investigating, I talked to several agencies about how they engage with different communities and what their deliverables are. And so from those discussions, I developed 3 basic tiers. It's important to note that, these are just kind of what was recommended to me, but we can make our own decisions about what might go into an RFP. So the first tier would be kind of repositioning or repackaging. And I think of it as professional design of what information is already available and what data might already be available. And I apologize, I think some language got left off of the memo here, but the deliverables would focus on digital content and downloadable material that would support outbound marketing and prospecting. And so I would hope there would be a development of a branding message, maybe some recommended tools and campaign strategy along with this to market to prospective businesses generally. And then the second tier is marketing assessment and analysis along with campaign development and execution. And in this tier, we would likely see an agency build on the first tier and add with it a second tier where there would be assistance in developing marketing and information campaigns and potentially using information tools. Messaging would focus on Pullman's distinctive assets, and there would be a search to find best fit retail, industry, commercial, or we could just focus on retail if that's what the council would like to do. But we could develop then new market data, tools, and content needed to support recruitment. And as part of this tier, I'm also including an option to focus on one particular industry or on retail. And I know that there are agencies that do matchmaking, very specifically working with brokers to align a community with the national and regional brands that it feels are the best fit, because of course every retailer has different needs. And so that could be an additional element of tier 2. Tier 3 would be kind of the whole kit and caboodle, where there would be an economic development marketing assessment and a long-term strategy. And that might be take place as a process that council's familiar with, where a consultant would come in and would engage local stakeholders and all of the economic development partners, and then provide a 10-year direction for the city of Pullman to market, grow, and diversify the economy. That said, you've already approved a budget of $4,000. And so I do want to mention that I would imagine that that budget would allow for some design of collateral for print and the web. So that's kind of embedded in tier 1 and already included in an estimated budget. So here are just some examples of some different opportunities and different kind of marketing that I've seen in different cities and from different agencies. So starting on the left, there are some branding materials, video tours and assets. That third little picture is mobility tracking, where information about where people have been and where they go by tracking cell phone data is available. Some of that information has really come a long way. And then of course, on web, there are dashboards that can be created to quickly and easily allow a company to find out anything that they might want to know to help them make their decision about where they want to consider locating. So I'm going to go back. I think some final considerations as you prepare some guidance for me and for staff would be, are we looking to market to all industries, or do we want to have a focus on retail? Could we start with an assessment, an initial marketing program, and maybe just consider recommendations for tools at a later time? That could go into the RFP. Do we want to consider matchmaking? And other considerations might be how best to collaborate with our partners, of which there are many in the city, and we certainly would want to collaborate with them. And as well, where do we want to focus? At what level? Nationally, regionally, locally, that might indicate a particular path that the council would like to take. So back to the tiers, with the motion being about creating an RFP, ways that you could consider going at this would be to look at, one tier individually or to mix and match. You could say that you want to go in a direction of just having a few of the elements of tier 1, and then adding something from tier 2. It's really all kind of available to move around here for the most part. And I tried to give some estimates. It is difficult to know that somewhat without going through the RFP process, because I imagine we would get responses that vary in terms of what a particular agency would provide and what they would charge for those deliverables. But I hope that this is enough information to kind of get us going toward an RFP. And I guess with that, I will be happy to answer questions, and I look forward to your guidance. Thank you.
Okay, I see Brandon, and again, could you take off of this screen there so we can see all the council members? Go to Brandon first, then we'll go to Nathan. Okay.
That's Jen. I can start talking while you do that. Thank you. I as you know, I feel rather strongly about this. I think we need the professional help, and because of that being, I guess, outside of the city, I think it would be really important to include that help with a really strong situational analysis. I think they need to do that, not us. We often will discount things that we don't want to hear or that we don't think are is the case. So when we attack something, even in with good strategy, good tactics, it's not focused correctly. Like our objectives are often off, and I want to make sure that we go about this the right way. And for me, the only way we can do that and start positioning and really creating that brand is if we have that outside perspective. Certainly after they do their due diligence and talk to everybody, that are the key stakeholders, but we want to make sure that happens from somebody who has a more objective view than we would.
Okay, Nathan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jennifer, this is really, really great. I know this has been a huge topic for all of us, and especially for you. You have the expertise to really drive this forward. I'm really happy to see this. And I know, just like a few council members on here, some of us do own businesses, so we understand some of the marketing that goes into it as well. But this is such a larger project. My question would be, with us coming out of the pandemic, I think hopefully, I think it's a pretty good time to be looking at this, but I'm not sure exactly how much money moving forward we can invest, and maybe that's Mike's area to look at that. And if we can do like a tiered, like a tier 2 and then move into a tier 3, if we have extra money, I'm not sure. I think the other point that's a question. And then the other point is, Brandon brought up a good discussion, is that most of us who have either lived here a long time or have settled in, we have blind spots. I think about it more as blind spots about what is good about Pullman. And every time I interact with somebody new or who has come here, California, Colorado, wherever, there are things that we miss out on that are huge draws that these people are identifying, and having that outside input, as Brandon has said, is really, really important. So thank you, Jennifer. And Just that question about the tier 2, if we have enough money to go with that, and maybe Mike, you can jump in, but yeah, so.
Okay, sure. I'd love to jump in because I've been thinking about this and talking to Jennifer a little as well. And coming into the American Rescue Plan, that certainly opens up a lot of different avenues other than just using fund reserves or moving some money around. So again, very early in the process on the American Rescue Plan, but I do want to point out, please bear with me. Okay, addressing the negative economic impacts caused by the public health emergency is the header on this one. When you talk about the subsection of rebuilding the public sector capacity, one of the suggestions, the recipients may also use funding to build their internal capacity to successfully implement economic relief with investments in data analysis, targeted outreach, and I think that's exactly what we're talking about here, if the council agrees with me, technology infrastructure and evaluating impacts. So there might be some dollars here as I go to bring this to you next week and talk a little bit more, but I will bring up one concern I have hearing this and looking at the timelines. They're very clear on when looks like we're going to be getting some money. It looks like we're going to be getting half of it in May of this year and the other half next year. But when we have to have that spent out is a little fuzzy to me still at this point. I pulled up a provision here and I just wish the language was a little bit stronger. It talks about, and I'm sorry, I'm doing the no-look meeting. I'm looking for it over here. Funding threshold used can be transferred between jurisdictions. And finally, it does not expire until December 31 of 23. I don't know what expire means as opposed to you need to have it spent. So when the Office of Financial Management gets a hold of this and I can start doing the reach out like I did with CARES, I'll feel a lot better about that date. But, you know, 21, 22, I mean, if we can have this spent by 22, I feel very, very comfortable. Outside of that, I want to do some more research for the council before we talk about a 3-year plan. Does that answer the question, Nathan? Does that over answer the question, Nathan, as usual? Sorry.
Okay, Brandon.
Yeah, and not to rush anything, but I know this is something that we, you know, Jen touched upon, and I've talked about this at length with Eileen. You know, if you're talking about recovery and retention and recruitment, we have to do this now. So we can't wait, or else it doesn't help those 3 R's. So I say we get the ball rolling, and you know, we don't want to be sloppy about it, but we do want to get this going ASAP. Eileen.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry about the background. Building staff here is working in the hallway. Yeah, ASAP. And there was some good deal of citizen concern a while back that maybe the dollars were going to be much more difficult to come by. And that was not the time to do marketing because money was so tight because of revenues. Okay, if we're going to get federal money for making this happen, let's make it happen, Captain, and right away, right now. Tier 2.
Okay, that was the next question, is make sure which tier we're going to be on. And so, Mike, we'll go back to you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just want to clarify in case I misled the council. When I said the spend out schedule, I was looking directly at Jen's estimated timelines, and I saw that tier 2 is a 12 to 24 month timeline versus tier 3 was an 18 to 36 month timeline. So I just wanted to make sure that I didn't mislead anybody on accident that I was asking to push this down. I was just trying to say that if it's going to go this long to do one of these tiers, I want to make sure it gets spent out of these dollars.
Okay, any other comments? Al Sorensen.
Yeah, that's another point I was going to make. Thanks, Mike. I think at this point it probably could be a combination of a number of things from different tiers, but this is something that needs to get started again sooner than later. I do have a couple of questions and a comment here. I don't think this is just about business recruitment, but it's about tourism and people coming here, not just business recruitment. And I think that's a really big part of this, is getting people into this town and creating an image and you know, oh my God, that looks cool, let's go there, instead of a picture of a tree that doesn't really say anything about the city, you know. And so I personally think that we've got to have, you know, quite a little bit of you know, consumer recruitment on this also. Jennifer, could you give me a little info? You said you spoke with many different agencies. Who did you talk to?
Oh gosh, Al, thank you for that question. You know, I have a list and I don't have it up on my screen right now. But I did talk to national firms, a few of them. As you might imagine, this is somewhat specialized. So, you know, I'll say that there is not a huge number of firms that specialize in economic development marketing. However, there are a number, there are enough that I would expect that we would have some competitive responses. And some of them might even be some of the same agencies that I would consider and want to talk to if we are awarded the tourism grant. So I can send a list out to council if you'd like to see the list of the firms that I've talked to.
Yeah, I think we got stuck on this once before with a consultant coming from someplace that had no idea what Pullman is about or our area is about, and I am not going to do that again. So we want to make sure that whatever we do or whoever we choose or where we go, we vet them enough to make sure that they understand where we are and who we are. And that is going to be super important. We had to cancel a contract because they had no idea what was going on here. So I have a very big concern about who we might get to do this.
And I think we've seen in the past too, where we've seen templates that they just say, okay, they'll just put the name of the city in there and they use the same template for everything else that they try and propose too. And that you can really spot something there that really doesn't apply to your own city. Brandon, I saw your hand, then we'll go to Eileen.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I think Al makes a fair point. You know, you have to draw that balance between somebody who is reputable and knows what they're doing, but they do have to have some idea of who we're about. And that is one of the things that I liked about BDS, is that they came in and did a lot of focus groups. They did a lot of survey research, trying to find out a little bit more about us. And honestly, you can only get so much of your finger on the pulse of the community if you're not here. But so I think drawing the balance between, you know, what I was talking about, having that outside objective perspective and somebody who understands the fabric of who we are, I think is pretty vital. My one worry is, and it seems like we've seen this a lot, is I don't want to hear, well, we only had one person, you know, one entity that ended up going after this RFP. I would you know, consider whatever cost it may take to be the cost of doing business, and making sure that we cast a wide net in maybe you know, I guess marketing this RFP, in fact, to make sure that people find out about it. And you know, I really do believe that if there are a finite amount of groups that do this kind of economic development marketing, something very specialized, we should be able to get in front of them.
Okay, Eileen.
I'm loving this. So I'm going to kind of jump ahead here. What is going to be our internal process as we go forward here in sorting and sifting? I like the dividing them up into 3 tiers so we can kind of mix and match and put together a menu of things that we want for that RFP. What's our internal process going to be? Jen, is that on your desk, or are you going to bring in, you know, kind of a working group of stakeholders or council members, or what do you have in your mind for a process on putting this RFP together with those tier elements?
Thanks. That's a great question, council member. And I'm going to see if I can punt that to City Administrator Urban somewhat. I think there are some different options. course, you could make a determination tonight on the tiers or the levels that you would like to see in the RFP, and staff could work on that and bring it back to council. I imagine that we could also create a small group, a task force to do the work, all of the work of determining the elements and writing the RFP and sending it out and reviewing and then bringing it back to council. I guess I'm going to stop talking because I don't want to get ahead of myself because I don't know the processes as well as city administrator does.
Sure. We can absolutely take whatever process that council would like us to move forward with. I would caution that from what I'm hearing in this conversation, the time is more of the essence. So bogging it down with too much process might not get the product you want out fast enough, especially looking at some of these timelines that Jen has provided in the tiers. So I leave it up to the council. Jen was planning to bring a draft RFP back on the 25th, according to this agenda item. And, you know, do you want to edit that, or do you want to create your own? How do we want to do this and still continue with our operations?
Well, I've heard, okay, we'll go to Al Sorensen.
I think this is something we need to keep moving on also, but to just get this PowerPoint and hear the presentation tonight and not being able to digest this for me to say, okay, here's the thing we're going to put out. I need a week at least to go through this. I would love the PowerPoint sent to me so that I can have the information, so that, you know, we've talked about using some things from each of the tiers or whatever. We've talked about the timeline. I'm not ready to make a decision tonight, but I would also like to volunteer my time to be part of this process on figuring this out. So I'm 100% in to help with this, whatever I need to do.
Yep.
And I saw Brandon's hand up as well. Ann Parks.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it would be helpful to have a draft proposal come back to us. Something, I always find it easier to have a starting point and do some editing rather than start from scratch on something such as this. So that would be my my proposal for how to start moving forward.
I've sort of heard tonight from most council people that tier 2 seemed to be the logical range to go for at this point, which could at least help sort of set a kind of budget and at least set some parameters as we start doing the RFP proposal, something like that. Dan, were you ready to say something on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, Glenn. I think I'd be in supportive of kind of within the range of tier 2, but in terms of process, Jen and Mike, what I think I would suggest is if you want to ask for, you know, maybe 2 council members to volunteer like Al just did to kind of provide some more detailed feedback, maybe meet with Jen to provide some detail on moving things within those buckets to get a draft to bring back to us. I think that would be appropriate in this circumstance.
We would certainly love the help if there are 2 volunteers, and we could talk about a timeline with that group so we can make sure we can meet often enough to bring a full draft back.
Okay, Nathan, I saw your hand.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, as I suggested before, the tier 2, and then also I would like to volunteer because I am a part of the Police Knowledge Corridor who's been trying to really market our area, and also on the 2040. So there's a few other groups looking along the same lines. And so bringing that knowledge, I think, would help in the process. So I'd like to volunteer as well.
Al?
Yeah, I already said I want to be on it, so
Yeah, right.
I will stand fast on that.
Okay, and Nathan volunteered as well. So at this point, I'm hearing you might want to delay it as opposed to making a motion to authorize staff to prepare a request, but I'm also hearing that you would like to have the staff move ahead on this. And you sort of gave a range of tier 2. So what is the sense of the council? You want to go for this motion or you want to delay it?
I'd like to go for the motion and then be able to help Jen, Al, and myself with
Okay.
this. So
Motion to pick one of the tiers? I don't think we're ready to pick a tier.
The motion actually doesn't say a tier. It just says prepare a request for proposals for an economic development marketing plan.
Okay, I want to make clear what we're talking about.
That's the motion. Okay. And Nathan, since you said you would support it, you would make the motion?
yeah, move forward with the RFP. Is that the way to move forward?
It just says the motion is to authorize staff to prepare a request for proposals for an economic development marketing plan.
So moved.
No,
Okay.
wait.
Okay.
Wait.
Eileen? Yes.
It indicates, am I reading this right? It says RFP for economic development marketing for their desired tier. That seems a little more specific than the motion that I think we want. Because Glenn, didn't you just say that we really are not picking a tier tonight?
According to this motion that's written, it doesn't say a tier. If you would like to have a tier in there.
There's some confusion.
Yeah.
I'm seeing now that the recommended action is worded one way and on the agenda it's worded another way.
Okay, I'm working off the agenda item.
Okay, I was looking at the recommended action, just so long
Okay.
as everybody's clear.
Yeah, I was looking at the agenda. So yeah.
Well, can we amend I mean, do we have to use that language that's in the agenda item? Or excuse me.
You can include that. I heard from Al that he wasn't ready for the tier yet, but we've also heard from several of you that said tier 2 would be the ideal way of going. So what do you?
I think the concern is if we choose tier 2, would we be locked into that, or would we be able to, as Jen said, add things and sort of create?
I'm looking at tier 2 as a money range.
Okay.
It just says 25 to 50,000 and a timetable of 12 to 24 months.
And we're not authorizing the actual, sending out the
money.
RFP tonight. We're just directing staff to develop the RFP. And
Yeah.
all these things are on the table when it comes back to us next
Right.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is actually going to be a long-term deal.
Sure it is.
At the end of the day. So
you heard the motion. It's a general kind of motion. Do I hear a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the motion is to authorize staff to prepare a request for proposals for an economic development marketing plan. That's the motion. I've had a motion, a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you, Council.
We are now at item number 4. It's a motion to authorize the mayor to execute an agreement with Whitman County District Court for misdemeanor and gross misdemeanor prosecutions, indigent defense, adjudication, incarceration costs for 2020 court services in Pullman. 2020, 2021. With that, we're going to go to Mike Urban.
2022.
Okay.
And
agenda.
And essentially, Council, this is a one-year continuation of our relationship with Whitman County District Court that was originally authorized by City Council first for 2020 on December 3rd, 2019, and then renewed again August 11th of 2020 for 2021. We're seeing this earlier this year to help facilitate some time off scheduling with staff at Whitman County. Very straightforward. I tried to squeeze a second year out of this and it didn't happen the way we were hoping to. And so we're just doing this 1 year at a time. So based on the needs of the community, staff recommends that we approve the agreement as presented.
Questions on this? Okay, Al Sorensen.
So where are we at looking at doing this ourselves? I know that there was a little discussion there or some information there, but I mean, where are we?
Sure. We've been discussing that internally, and Chief Jenkins has a meeting tomorrow with his PhD candidate that's been doing a bunch of research on filling some of the holes on the original presentation as it was delivered to council. And they're going to try to get together and see if we can wrap this all up and put it into a new presentation, a little easier to digest for the group, and then bring that back. So I'll have more information probably by lunch tomorrow as to what that would look like as far as the timeline goes. But that's the intent. There was a piece, there was a chunk of that as far as comparing local jurisdictions goes that she's been working on.
Okay, I don't want this to delay us looking at doing it on our own. And is this contract something that we can cancel if we enter into it, or does it go until the end?
I would, pulling up the contract right now, I do not have that scope of agreement. It does not look like we have the ability to end it early as per the contract. Certainly we can get the two parties together and see if that's mutually beneficial. But in a quick scan here, Laura, unless you see something that I don't, it doesn't look like there's a end date. I mean, an early end date. There is an end date. There is no question there is an end date.
So this commits us to the end of 23?
22.
22.
It's a
Numbers are a little bit off in there because it says one thing here and another thing there. So end of 22.
Right. Dan, records.
I was just going to say, Al, just practically speaking, 1 year time frame is kind of a tight time frame to make a transition if we were to look at building out a court system on our own. So I think, certainly at a 1 year contract extension, I think it's totally reasonable to enter into this. If we were looking at a multi-year contract, that might be a bigger question. But I think I don't think it's a practical time frame for us to take that on within a year and get that set up and going. And there's also, with that, there would have to be some transition time to work with the county on how to do that transition.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you there. I just wanted to make sure that we were still moving forward.
And
Mayor,
yes, Laura.
what I wanted to point out is that the contract is actually not just for the prosecution and adjudication, the court services part of it. It's also for the jail services. So even if the city were to move forward with the municipal court, we'd still have to negotiate and deal with the jail services part of it.
And again, on this motion, it should say 2022, correct? And so in the agenda item. Okay. So do I hear any further questions? Number one, do I hear a motion on item number 4?
Move to adopt.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, and I'll read the motion. Motion to authorize the mayor to execute agreement with Whitman County District Court for misdemeanor and gross misdemeanor prosecution, indigent defense, adjudication, incarceration costs for 2022 court services in Pullman. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. We now move to item number 5, which is a motion to authorize the city administrator proceed with adding the position of administrative specialist as requested. Mike Urban.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening again, Council. In your packet is a copy of the memo I sent out earlier in April, which really summarizes the agenda item. And what it boils down to is several of our departments have been working to identify staffing efficiencies and possible reorganizations to create some cost savings to the city. This is going on through many departments, and I too have looked at our department to see what we could do to help staff a new human resources manager, finance director, city administrator, plus take some of the pressure off of our city clerk, whose public records requests have increased by a very significant number, I believe 54%, if we go back and look at the memo. And what we've determined is that with some of the staffing changes we've had and some of the way that we're setting up this potential position to, help staff the lodging tax advisory committee when that does come in-house here very shortly. So we'll be doing the JLARC reporting and setting up the meetings and those items, as well as doing analysis on cost savings throughout the city, in particular the utility funds, to find additional cost savings and efficiencies. So it'll help fund this position in the long term, not just with additional revenue, but to find this position is more self-sufficient. So we already have a job description for an administrative specialist, which I've also attached to your packet. And what I'm asking for council's approval tonight, if you go through my memo, as the cost savings, it's year one, it's very minimal. I think it's less than $100. And that's because I've included upfitting this person as well. I didn't want to hide any, additional expenses. I put the benefits in there, the cost to get a computer and all those items. So really, when those items go away in year two is where we see the true cost savings. But that also gives us additional staff capacity to staff all those items, help with city council goals across all of our departments, and making sure that communicating between those and making sure we're meeting projects is a very important part of what this position is. It's a really quick, gloss over on all of this because there's so much writing involved for the justification. But the ultimate answer is, in the long run, with the next budget process, we can budget for this properly and try to make it as self-sufficient without dipping into more revenues. And that's what we're trying to do in several of these other departments right now as well. So there's going to be some more of these as the months go on, where we've taken a critical look inward on our own recovery, retention, and recruitment, and tried to come up with the best possible product so we can deliver our services to the community. So what I'm asking for is to be able to go out and get this position and put them to work for us. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Dan Records, and then we'll go to Al.
Just a comment. Mike, I know you've, in this last year, you've taken on about 4 jobs. And so, we need to get you some help. So I support this.
We're grateful for those 3 or 4 jobs that he's been doing, and doing very well too. Al?
Can you tell me where the funding kind of is going to come from to start with before we get into budgeting for the next year?
Sure. I'll refer you to the second page of my memo, that bottom table. And basically, I'm starting with the salary starting from June 1st through the rest of the year. And as this progresses along, if it takes a little longer than June 1st, there's additional savings, obviously, since we haven't filled the position right away. So I start with the salary and the benefits, and then the one-time setup costs. And then I start looking at what we can offset those against. So there's some salary savings in the finance director position, as well as the human resources, because we budgeted for a higher amount. The accounting specialist position, this is a reclassification of the accountant that used to be up in the finance department and is now going to be an accounting specialist. That new staffer arrives on June 1st. There's a front counter administrative clerk. And when we originally budgeted for this position, it was budgeted at a much higher amount because of the longevity of the previous administrative clerk. And then we take 5% out of the Civic Improvement Fund, since this position will be spending about 5% of their time working with the Lodging Tax Committee. That seems like an appropriate amount there. And then 10% of the position would be paid for by the utility funds, because they'll be doing at least 10% of their analysis within those realms, whether we're looking at water rates, what are we going to store on the shelf as far as inventory goes versus letting it sit on somebody else's shelf and ordering it just in time. So I have very large plans for this position, and then certainly the support in human resources on projects, finance, and then administration, and through administration, the mayor and the city council.
Thanks, Mike. I just wanted to make sure everybody kind of saw where that was coming from and the breakdown and all that. So, you know, the fiscal side of this, of course, when adding a position is always important for everyone to understand. Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, do I hear a motion on this?
Move to approve.
Okay. And somebody got a second in there. So between Dan and Eileen, but the official coverage is that D has that one. So it's a motion to authorize the city administrator to proceed with adding the position of administrative specialist as requested. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you, council. I still love it waking up every day and coming to work for you guys.
All right. We now go to new business, and we now have new business we know of after earlier this evening. So we have at least two items before you. One dealing with LTAC, the other one dealing with 4th of July. And well, one actually the extension of the chamber contract through the end of the year, December 31st, as opposed to the end of June. And the other one was yeah. So do I'll entertain who would like to make a motion right now.
What are we, which one are we talking about?
Well, let's just do one at a time. Let's do the chamber renewal.
I would move to extend the chamber contract to the end of the year.
Okay.
No discussion, or I mean, I
Well, we need a second.
Yeah.
We need a second
Okay.
first.
Motion a second. Okay. Now discussion.
okay.
Okay. Al, did you want to discuss this? Okay.
Okay. I'm just going to make a point here that maybe now might not be a bad time for us to take over. There aren't very many events to promote at the moment, and this might be a better time to take this over than when all of a sudden we're busy. I just throw that out there as a possibility, instead of just delaying and kicking the can down the road.
Any other comments?
Well, I would disagree. I don't think we have time to put anything together between now and the end of June. And with so much flux going on in terms of personnel at City Hall, I mean, you need to give people a chance to breathe.
I agree.
Yeah.
The reason why I am in favor of extending the contract is because when we originally talked about, changing the process to go take it out of the budget, redo the whole process, the idea was that we would be putting together a kind of a proposal to put out to bid for a tourism promotion contract or tourism promotion. And we have not been able to get that together in time. And so I feel like that was part of the bargain of setting that June 30th deadline, is that we thought we would have had that further along at this point. And I don't think we've done that as the city. And so I think it makes sense, just in terms of fairness in the contract, to just extend it until we get some of those other elements in place. The city has more items to check off before we get on with making a change. And so I would like to stick with the status quo of until we get some of those further items checked off that list.
Okay. Any other comments? Nathan Weller.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think other than the comments that have already been made, while we're midstream here in the pandemic, and hopefully the end again, shifting things around, canceling a contract, it speaks very badly of any relations and between the chamber and the city. It would definitely undermine trust, and I think it would create some real issues between businesses, the city, and getting back on the feet. I think it creates so many more issues. So other than what has already been mentioned, the collaborations is extremely important.
Okay, we'll go to Eileen next, and then we'll go back to Dan.
I really wrestled with this, and I could really see it both ways. The fact that my concern was, and maybe it's just kind of very esoteric, my concern was that as we are moving forward with what Jennifer Hackman presented to us this evening, and with maybe getting the grant for developing tourism, I was concerned that if we retained or if we extended the contract, that we'd have too many irons in the fire in this area, and I'm still concerned about that. If we've got this RFP out here and this RFP out here, and we're still kind of developing something else, that by not having the contract terminate on the 30th of June, that it would kind of make things more complicated. But I honestly have been very much of two minds on this. Wow. Talk to somebody else.
Okay, we'll go to Dan, and then we'll go to Ann Parks.
The other point I just wanted to make is that, by us seeking to extend this, we still have, as it stands right now, the contract ends June 30th, but we would have to negotiate that with the chamber. So it's still, by us saying we're willing to extend it, it's still in the chamber's hands. They could come back and say, we're not prepared to continue on because of their current status. And so I just think, in terms of what we had agreed to in that contract extension, or the limiting the contract to June 30th, by offering the extension, we're kind of putting the ball in their court to say, are they willing to take it on? And if they're not, then we'd have to be looking at, what we're going to do to manage the tourism promotion in the meantime. And I agree that there's not necessarily a whole lot in that realm while we're still in the pandemic, but there is still activities that can be done.
And Parks.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree. I understand and appreciate Eileen's point very much. But I also feel that this is not the time to drastically change course with the chamber for a lot of reasons. First of all, I think they deserve a seat at the table to discuss, to tell us what their part, as Dan just said, in the contract renewal would be. And also, I think that we cannot underestimate the relationship that we have with the chamber and that we've had for a long time. And it's a really important part to me that I don't want to just dismiss. And so basically, I think we should extend it because we're under a time constraint here. But I also think we need to have some discussion with them, whether it's a special meeting or like what we did with the district court a few years ago, where everybody was literally at the table talking publicly. I would like to do something like that before any decision is made on our part.
Okay, Pat Wright.
And I would concur, Ann. I think that we have a long-standing relationship with the chamber. They're a good partner for us. To blow up that relationship would just be devastating on so many different levels. And Nathan touched on it, starting with the trust factor. And I think we owe our partners more consideration than that.
Any other comments? We've already have a motion and a second. At this point, all those in favor of extending the contract to the end of the year, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
One nay. Okay, there's another possible proposal tonight too. It's regarding the 4th of July. So Pat from LTAC, or who wants to make this proposal?
Well, we met this afternoon in kind of an abbreviated time frame, given the timeline that we had for the contract to be negotiated for delivery for July 4th. And so after much thoughtful discussion and deliberation, the LTAC group is recommending that we approve an expenditure of up to $16,000 to pay for a fireworks display on the evening of July 4th.
Okay. Any other, do I hear a second to that?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion on that? And again, it's up to, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to spend that and they have to show receipts. So Al, your hand.
Yeah, as I've already mentioned earlier in the discussion today, that we did have a very, very good discussion today about all this, and my questions have been put at ease with Laura telling me that these funds are okay to be going that direction. And as I've said earlier today in the meeting, and I've said tonight, you know, I think the fireworks display in this town is one of the things we're known for, and I don't ever want to see it end. So I am completely in favor of this.
Any other comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We checked earlier before we started the meeting and there was no new business coming in from the general public. So at this time, City Council will adjourn to an executive session pursuant to RCW 42.30.110 to consider the selection of a site or acquisition of real estate by lease or purchase when public knowledge regarding such consideration could cause a likelihood of increased price. The executive session expected to last about 10 minutes. And if it becomes necessary to extend the executive session, someone will return to announce the anticipated additional time. The council does not anticipate taking any action after the executive session. And again, council, stay on here. You'll be invited to the room for the meeting of the executive session. Again, it's going to be 10 minutes. It will take us probably a minute to get to the private room. So the executive session would start at 9:17. Okay, here we are again, back in public session.
Time travel's tough.
Yes, now I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Nathan and Brandon was second. Okay. And we adjourned at 9:28. All right. All those in
Everybody
favor
later.
saying aye.
See you.
Bye.
Good seeing you.
Any opposed? With that, we're out. Okay. Thank you much.
Thanks, everybody.
Everybody.
Uh,
Night.